What is up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Great qualifying today. First one of the season. Great to see the season starting up. Verstappen on pole. But before we get into the video, make sure you like and subscribe before the video starts. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about each driver's qualifying and how I think they did. And if they can do better, how they did compared to their teammate. So qualifying in P20, Mazepin, or how he's being nicknamed, Mazespin, not a great qualifying from him at all. So qualifying in P20, Mazepin, or how he's being nicknamed, Mazespin, not a great qualifying for him, almost horrendous. I think he only really got one time onto the table. He spun already 4 times this weekend, twice during qualifying, and he's getting a lot of pushback on social media because he overtook Vettel and a few other drivers during an outlap, which you're not supposed to do. And then to make matters worse, he spun in front of them, ruining their laps because of yellow flags. And really, just I know he doesn't have a great car with the Haas. The balance is not great, but really you can't be spinning, especially compared to his teammate, who we'll get into in a minute. But I would say a horrendous qualifying for him. And I don't see him getting much higher than P20 really, but you got to at least put a few times out there to try and get higher and have some etiquette on track. In P19, his teammate Mick Schumacher, like I said, the Haas, not a great car, but I think Schumacher got out there, did his laps, no mistakes whatsoever, no funny business. So I think a really, really solid qualifying from him. And I think it just, he got the most out of the car that he could. So I don't see him doing much better, but I think it was a great qualifying from him. In P18, Vettel, and personally for me, an absolute shocker. I know he was hampered by those yellow flags, like I mentioned, Mazepin overtaking him and then causing the yellow flags. But still, you would see him maybe getting higher with that, even with his first few laps. And I know tough, just bad luck. He can't seem to get a break. So I would say a bad qualifying for him, but I wouldn't say horrendous because it's not really his fault. He just got really unlucky, just does not have any luck at the moment. And then in P17, Nicholas Latifi, an okay qualifying for him. I was really hoping to see him step up from last season. He got out there, he did his laps, no mistakes, but still, you're just not seeing any progress, which is disappointing. So I would say a bad performance from him, even though it's consistent with what he's been doing. When at the start of a new season, you'd hope to see him make a step up. So hopefully he'll be able to get into Q2 like George has, or like George did and has this season. P16, Esteban Ocon, another one just like Vettel, absolute shocker. This was horrendous qualifying. He tried to blame it on the yellow flags. When you look at the data, he actually had a faster first sector than his teammate, which is where the yellow flags were. It was in the second sector that he messed up, second and third sector where he messed up. So nowhere to put the blame except on himself. I know the car is not great. Renault have taken a giant, or Renault Alpine now, I've taken a giant leap back, which is really sad to see. Kind of what I predicted. If you go back to my first video, where I predicted, and my second video, the constructors, that the Alpine car was not going to be great, and that's what we're seeing. P15, Mr. Saturday, George Russell, great qualifying from him. Looks like Williams has made small steps forward, not great. We'll have to see. They didn't do great around the circuit last year, so we'll have to see moving forward after. I would say a solid qualifying from him, P15. Hopefully we'll be able to see him in Q2, maybe get a little bit higher in Q2 a few times this season. P14, Kimi Raikkonen, that Alfa Romeo there's a lot of buzz around it that it was going to be a lot better than last season. And they've definitely made a step forward. Kimi getting out qualified by Giovinazzi, which we'll get into in a minute, but I would say an okay qualifying from him. I think I see him getting a little bit farther up, but still this is pretty strong getting into Q2. P13, Yuki Sonoda, immensely disappointing. I would say he was in Q2 or sorry, P2 at one point, which was amazing. Nobody saw that, but then he really in Q2 he really couldn't get his second lap together, and he ended up P13. The commentators were talking about, which I agree with, when he gets his driving style right. When he goes out there and performs, he does super well. But when his driving style just doesn't connect, you're going to see him getting P15, P14, which is just not, you can't really do with a teammate like Pierre Gasly if you want to fight with him. So I think his biggest issue this season is going to be consistency. So I would say this was a bad qualifying for him, and I hope to see him do better. And I think he will do better at times. P12, Antonio Giovinazzi, great qualifying from him. Doing better than Raikkonen, which we didn't see much last season. Driving well, no mistakes. I would say great qualifying from him. And we've seen him make a lot of progress, which I'll admit, in my previous videos, I said I didn't see him making a lot of progress this season. I was surprised that Alfa Romeo kept him, but he showed that he can do better than Kimi and that he's made some progress along with the car. So I think that's really great, and maybe we'll be able to see him maybe dabble into Q3 a few times. And in an 11th, Sergio Perez. It's looking more and more like that second Red Bull seat is cursed. Unfortunately, he got unlucky with some yellow flags and things like that, but I think it puts him, you put the blame on him, pretty horrendous, I would say, especially with a teammate like Verstappen. I think he's going to do a lot better than this. He's going to rebound from this, maybe even do well in the race. We've seen him even when he qualifies towards the back of the grid. He can really move forward because he doesn't feel that pressure. So I think he's going to do really great tomorrow, but I would say a pretty horrendous qualifying for him. In P10, Lance Stroll. I think good qualifying for him, great qualifying for him. That Aston Martin is not where people saw it being, like we said, Vettel out in Q1. So I think this was a good lap from Stroll, and we're seeing him make some progress, out qualifying Vettel already, and that's great to see. Hopefully that Aston Martin will do better. I was really hoping maybe they challenge with Ferrari or with McLaren, but it's not looking that way. In P9, Fernando Alonso, really mixed emotions for him, I think. Great qualifying for him. Obviously, similar situation as to Lance Stroll, teammate out in Q1, but they're in Q3. Good qualifying, great qualifying. That Alpine car, not doing well at all, but I think a solid qualifying from him. P8, Carlos Sainz, disappointing, I would say. He was beating Leclerc throughout the session, doing better than him. He had an engine problem. His engine all of a sudden stopped. So that could be an explanation. Maybe he had some damage, but I would say disappointing qualifying from him. I really saw him really battling with Leclerc, which he did, but when it really mattered, Leclerc did a lot better than him. So I would say a disappointing qualifying, not bad, but disappointing. P7, Lando Norris, another disappointing one. Him and Ricciardo. Ricciardo's in P6. We'll get into that in a minute. I think good qualifying from him. He got the most out of the car. I'm more disappointed that I thought the car was going to do better. It looked really great during the practice sessions, during testing, all that stuff. But I think a solid qualifying from him. Ricciardo, Lando Norris's teammate, like I said, the McLaren not looking as great in qualifying as it did in testing or in the practice sessions this weekend. But I think a solid qualifying from him. Already at qualifying Norris, I think that's going to be a really great and interesting teammate battle. In P5, I think a mega amazing qualifying for Mr. Pierre Gasly. P5, a lot better than Sonoda. That AlphaTauri, I think it's going to do really well. It's going to challenge with the McLarens. I think that may be a bold statement. I know we're still in the first. We haven't even had the first race yet. We'll see how their race pace is, but their qualifying pace is amazing. So I think a really great qualifying for him. He got the most out of the car. P4, Charles Leclerc. Great to see Ferrari have some pace. I think this was a solid qualifying for him. I think that's the most he's going to be able to get out of that car. It's a little bit of a mystery because the Ferrari was really lagging behind in practice sessions and in testing, but all of a sudden they had this pace in qualifying that nobody saw. So I think a solid qualifying from him. It's a little hard to measure because you don't know how much raw pace that Ferrari really has, so there's no benchmark for him. So I would say a good qualifying. In P3, Valtteri Bottas, again, hard one to judge because that Mercedes isn't great. So I think he got a lot out of the car that he could, but disappointing for him because he really wants to be challenging for pole positions or at least in P2. So I would say an okay qualifying for him. I think he got a lot out of the car, but I think that Mercedes just isn't there with that Red Bull yet. And we'll get into that in a minute. Verstappen beating Hamilton in P2 by 4 tenths. Hamilton in a similar situation with then his teammate Bottas. I think Hamilton solid qualifying. I would say he said he got the most out of the car. I know Bottas had trouble because he burned an extra set of tires. I think in Q2, if I'm not mistaken. So in Q3, he didn't have that extra tire set to go up against Hamilton and Verstappen. So I think it would have been a lot closer between the two. So I would say okay qualifying for Lewis. I know he wants to be challenging for that pole position, as he has been in the last few years. So I would say an okay qualifying for him in Mercedes overall. And then the man of the hour, Red Bull's Max Verstappen. Great qualifying from him. People suspected he had floor damage. He went over a curb, but looked like he didn't have too much damage. Obviously, he qualified in P1, so great qualifying from him, really solid. I'm really looking forward to this season because I think Mercedes and Red Bull are going to have a great fight. I'm not really sure how the midfield is going to do yet because we haven't seen race pace, but I think Alpha Tauri and McLaren are going to have some great battles. So I think the season is gearing up to be a really great season and absolutely mega qualifying from Verstappen, except for that one slip up, which is the first slip up we've seen him make at all between the practice sessions, testing. So I think really great qualifying, and I can't wait for the season. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos as we're getting right into the season. Make sure to check out my other social medias that are linked below. Thank you for watching.